I messed up. My husband found out that the child isn't his and took brutal revenge.
Freaking out. Apparently the kid isn't his. He threw all my stuff out of our house. I need help. Hello, Redditors, a longtime user and fan of this platform, but I've never really had a need to come on here. I am coming on here now because I desperately need advice. I just got kicked out of the house by my husband after he found out that the chat wasn't his. It was a one-time mistake, and I really didn't know how to remedy it. I know you're probably wondering what happened, so let me give you some backstory first. My name is Felicia, and I am a 30-year-old woman. I have been married to my husband, Robin, who is a 32-year-old man for 5 years now. Robin and I met on a dating site. He was very charming, and I instantly got attracted. We dated for a few years before deciding to get married. It was a whirlwind romance, but I never felt that it went too fast. Robin is the exact opposite of me. He is handsome, charming, and ambitious. He has a magnetic personality that draws people towards him effortlessly. He is a successful architect, while I, on the other hand, am a complex character. I am intelligent and warm, but I have insecurities and vulnerabilities, and I am not as popular or as charming as Robin. I was cautious about trying online dating, not knowing what to expect. But Robin's profile caught my eye right away. He seemed really friendly and confident. Our chats were easy, and I felt like we clicked, even through the screen. When we finally met in person, I was drawn to Robin's outgoing personality. He made me feel special, like I was the center of his attention. But deep down, I could tell he had his own insecurities too, which made me feel closer to him. Our relationship just felt right from the start. We enjoyed simple things together, like stealing glances across the room or having heart-to-heart talks. But sometimes I worried that I wasn't as outgoing or impressive as Robin. Despite my doubts, I knew we had something special. I admired Robin's drive and ambition, and he appreciated me for who I was, flaws included. Together, we faced life's challenges with love and support. From the moment we started dating, it was clear that Robin was on a successful path. As an architect, he brought in a steady income, while I pursued my passion as an artist, which unfortunately didn't bring in much money. Robin didn't mind covering the bills. He was just glad to see me doing what I loved. However, his demanding job meant he was often away, leaving me feeling isolated and alone. Despite his best efforts, the loneliness crept in, casting a shadow over our otherwise happy relationship. Having a heart-to-heart with Robin about feeling lonely was tough. He was doing his best juggling work and our relationship, but with him being the main breadwinner, his job kept him away a lot. One night, when Robin was out again for the weekend and I was feeling really low, I ended up at a bar alone. That's where I met John. We hit it off right away, and with a few drinks in me, things got out of hand and we had sex. The next morning, regret hit me hard, and I promised myself never to drink like that again. The idea of coming clean to Robin scared me. I was terrified of hurting him or messing up what we had. So I kept it to myself, hoping I could bury the guilt and move on. I loved Robin too much to lose him, and I knew I would lose him if I ever came clean. The fear of losing Robin was overwhelming, and the thought of confessing filled me with dread. I cherished him deeply and couldn't bear the idea of him walking away because of my mistake. So I made a decision to keep my indiscretion a secret, locking it away deep within me. When John expressed interest in seeing each other again, I shut him down immediately. I made it clear that what happened was a mistake, fueled by alcohol and loneliness, and that I was committed to my relationship with Robin. I hoped that by distancing myself from John, I could bury the memory of that night and move forward. Months passed, and just as life seemed to settle back into a semblance of normalcy, I discovered I was pregnant. I was absolutely horrified when I found out I was pregnant. It felt like my world was crumbling around me. I had been so consumed with the fear of Robin finding out about my infidelity that I completely forgot to take my birth control pill. Deep down, I knew the baby was likely John's, but admitting that to Robin was out of the question. I loved him too much to risk losing him, so I made the gut-wrenching decision to lie and tell him the baby was his. To my surprise, Robin was over the moon when I shared the news with him. His joy was infectious, and he wasted no time in proposing to me. In just a few months, we were married. Despite the whirlwind of happiness surrounding our wedding, guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. I knew I was deceiving Robin, but I convinced myself that it was for the greater good. After all, telling him the truth would have shattered our happiness and torn our family apart. Our honeymoon was like a dream come true, with Robin sparing no expense to make it unforgettable. Despite the challenges of pregnancy, including morning sickness and hormonal swings, Robin was my rock, supporting me every step of the way. His excitement for the baby only intensified my guilt, knowing deep down that the child wasn't his. But the reality of our situation weighed heavily on me. Robin was not only the love of my life, but also my lifeline. He provided for us financially, and without him, I would struggle to make ends meet. The thought of losing him was unbearable, so I buried my guilt and focused on preserving our marriage. Meanwhile, John's attempts to reach out only added to my stress. Each time he tried to contact me, I shut him down, refusing to entertain the possibility of him being the father. I reassured myself that the lie was necessary to protect my marriage and our future as a family. Soon the baby came. He was so cute, and I am going to call him Felix for the sake of privacy. The first few months with Felix were a wild ride of joy and exhaustion. He was a healthy, adorable little guy, and everyone couldn't get enough of him. Robin was over the moon about having a son, and he stepped up big time to help me out. He even dialed back his work hours to be around more, which made all the difference. With Robin's help and support from our families, we got through those tough early days. But as Felix started growing up a bit, I started feeling a bit restless. Don't get me wrong, being a stay-at-home mom was great, but I needed something more. The days at home were starting to blend together, and I missed the challenge of work. So I decided I'd go back to work once Felix was a bit older, maybe around 2 or 3 years old. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew it was the right one for me. Plus, a break from diapers and baby talk sounded pretty good right about then. Things were great for a while, however. As Felix grew, it became clear to everyone that he didn't quite resemble Robin. The whispers started when he was around a year old, and by the time he was a little over a year, it was hard to ignore. I couldn't shake off the worry that had plagued me during pregnancy. Deep down, I'd prayed that Felix wouldn't take after John in looks. I knew there was no chance he'd look like Robin, but I hoped he'd take after me enough to throw people off the scent. Unfortunately, Felix ended up resembling me a lot, but with a strong resemblance to John, too. It didn't take long for everyone to notice the stark contrast between Felix and Robin. Felix's red hair stuck out like a sore thumb against the backdrop of Robin's blonde locks and my own black hair. It was a real head-scratcher for everyone, including me. I didn't really get how genetics worked, but I was crossing my fingers that Felix would end up with hair like mine or Robin's. But fate had other plans, and Felix ended up with fiery red hair, just like John. As Felix got older, his red hair became the talk of the town, sparking questions about where he got it from. I was relieved when Robin didn't seem bothered by Felix's red hair. He reassured me, saying he knew Felix was his son, no matter the color of his hair. Robin even mentioned that his grandma had red hair, suggesting that might be where Felix got it from. His understanding and acceptance eased some of the worry I had been carrying then. It meant the world to me how Robin always had my back whenever Felix's appearance was questioned. One particular instance stands out, when a cousin of Robin's, who was visiting, couldn't help but comment on Felix's red hair. Instead of letting it become an awkward moment, Robin smoothly stepped in and explained that Felix probably inherited his red hair from their grandma. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders as Robin defended me and diffused the situation with ease. What struck me most was how the cousin responded. Instead of dwelling on the differences, they praised genetics for its mysterious ways, highlighting how it could uncover hidden traits and bring surprises into the world. It was a reminder that sometimes what makes us unique is also what makes life beautiful. As Felix turned 2, I found myself considering a return to work. I didn't want anything too stressful, but rather something flexible that would still allow me plenty of time with Felix. Remote work wasn't appealing since I was itching to get out of the house. I started browsing job listings, but I wasn't in any rush. Robin, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about the idea of me going back to work. With his income now higher than before, he didn't see the need for me to work outside the home. I sat down with Robin and laid it all out, explaining why I felt the need to go back to work. Unlike him, I didn't have a wide circle of friends. Robin was the social butterfly, effortlessly charming everyone he met, while I was more of a lone wolf with few connections outside our family. With Felix to care for, my world had become even smaller, especially on days when Robin was away for work. The loneliness weighed heavy on me, and I missed him dearly. The four walls of our home started to feel suffocating, and I yearned for a change of scenery. There was nobody to invite me on girls' night out or to invite me outside for drinks. It was just me. And even though I enjoyed the loneliness, they were days it felt suffocating. Going back to work wasn't just about earning money. It was about reclaiming a sense of independence and purpose outside the confines of our home. It was a way for me to break free from the isolation and monotony and to feel like I was contributing something meaningful to the world beyond our family and feeling like I was more than just a mom. Robin agreed with me and even apologized for the loneliness I had been feeling. He said he felt genuinely sorry and assured me he was doing his best. I told him there was no need to apologize because, truth be told, I felt sorry too. Robin was putting in long hours at work to provide for us, and he was doing an excellent job of it. After Felix was born, we upgraded to a bigger house with a home theater and a swimming pool. However stupid, John just wouldn't leave me alone. It was frustrating, to say the least. He had been persistent in trying to meet up, and I decided to entertain him this time just to put an end to it for good. Instead of blocking him as I usually did, I responded to his text. We agreed to meet outside of town to avoid being recognized. When we met, I made it clear to John that there was no way Felix could be his child. I explained that Felix was Robin's and that I had taken the morning after pill after that night. John tried to defend himself by pointing out Felix's red hair, claiming it was like his. I warned him that I would involve the police if he continued to harass us. I asked if he had been stalking us, but he denied it, saying he had only seen us at places like the store or the park. I reminded him that red hair ran in Robin's family, making it clear once and for all that Felix wasn't his child. I told him to stop worrying me and explained the situation thoroughly so he wouldn't bother me again. I even mentioned that I had done a DNA test, which finally convinced him to drop it. John apologized for bothering me and assured me he didn't mean to come off as creepy. He was just curious, and if Felix had been his child, he would have wanted a place in their life. I reiterated that Felix wasn't his child and that he shouldn't worry me any further. Then I left. With Felix at his grandparents' and Robin heading to work, it was just me at home. I understood Robin's stress, especially dealing with demanding clients at work. When he suggested I take a break and go out the next day while he stayed home with Felix, I was thrilled. It was rare for Robin to have a free day, and even rarer for him to insist I take time for myself. Since I didn't have many friends to hang out with, most days it was just me and Felix at home, so the prospect of having a day to myself was incredibly exciting. The next day, Robin handed me his credit card and encouraged me to treat myself to some pampering. He planned to take Felix to the park for some quality father-son time. I seized the opportunity and indulged in a day of self-care. I treated myself to a spa session, got my nails done, and even refreshed my hair. It felt like a luxury to have some time just for me, and I savored every moment of it. Returning home, Felix was in high spirits, and he excitedly babbled about his day with Robin at the park, and Robin told me about how he had enjoyed pizza. We spent some time watching TV together, had dinner, and then settled down for bed. However, over the next few days, I noticed Robin's irritability creeping back in. I attributed it to his usual work stress and didn't think much of it at first. As Robin's irritability worsened, he began directing it towards me, which was deeply unsettling. His behavior worsened to the point where he wouldn't interact with Felix much. Communication became strained, with Robin shutting down and refusing to engage in conversation. Despite my attempts to address the issue, Robin insisted that everything was fine and attributed his behavior to work-related stress. This pattern continued for several days, leaving me feeling increasingly concerned and isolated. Despite my attempts to address the issue, Robin insisted that everything was fine and attributed his behavior to work-related stress. This pattern continued for several days, leaving me feeling increasingly concerned and isolated. Feeling concerned about Robin's behavior, I decided to seek help from his parents, who were always understanding and supportive. After discussing it with Robin, we agreed that I would visit them in a few days' time. Robin was fine with the plan. And Robin even encouraged us to go, wanting a day to himself. The next day, Felix and I got ready and headed to his parents' house. It was a pleasant visit, filled with warm conversation and reassurances that Robin's behavior was likely just work-related stress. Felix enjoyed playing there, and his grandparents showered him with affection. After spending several hours there, I realized it was getting late and decided to head home to prepare dinner. However, when I arrived, I was shocked to find not only my belongings on the porch, but also Felix's belongings, indicating that something was seriously wrong. Feeling bewildered and scared, I stood frozen as I stared at my and Felix's belongings strewn on the porch. Why had Robin thrown them out? My heart was racing with confusion and anxiety as I desperately tried calling him, but he refused to answer. Resorting to banging on the door, I hoped my neighbors wouldn't call the cops for the noise. After what felt like an eternity, Robin cracked the door open just enough to peek out and ask what I wanted. I was taken aback. What did he mean? I just wanted to come inside. I had returned from his parents' place feeling stressed, and Felix was tired and needed to sleep. The situation made no sense, and I couldn't understand why Robin was acting this way. However, I soon found out why he was acting this way. Robin looked me dead in the eye and told me he knew Felix wasn't his child. When Robin stared me down and said those words, it felt like my whole world collapsed. I wished I could just vanish into thin air. At first, I nervously chuckled, thinking he was pulling my leg, but his expression told me he was dead serious. He dropped the bombshell that he'd done a DNA test, proving Felix wasn't his biological child. It felt like a punch to the gut. Robin's calm voice contrasted with the fire burning in his eyes as he accused me of betraying him, of trying to pass off another guy's kid as his own. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me stunned and overwhelmed with guilt. I stood there. I was unable to find the right words, as Robin made it clear he never wanted to see me again. Standing there, still reeling from Robin's accusation, I watched as he walked back inside and closed the door. It felt like a punch to the gut, and I went through a whirlwind of emotions right then and there. I could feel the eyes of our nosy neighbors on me, but I didn't want to make a scene or become the talk of the town. I wanted to cry, scream, and beg all at once. But I knew there was no point in begging Robin for forgiveness. He was too stubborn, and I didn't want to subject myself to more humiliation. So I called an Uber to take me and Felix to my parents' house. Packing our things quickly, I left behind the home we had shared and headed for the comfort of my childhood home. Here I am, stuck in my room, feeling utterly defeated. I've been crying my eyes out for what seems like forever. Leaving Robin's place was tough, but now I'm completely falling apart. My folks are mad, of course, but there's not much they can do. They're talking about staging some kind of intervention, hoping to convince Robin to give me another chance. It sounds like a long shot, and honestly, I'm not sure if it'll make any difference. I can't shake this feeling of guilt and dread, knowing I've messed everything up. All I can do now is wait and hope for the best. It's tough right now because my parents are the only ones in my corner, willing to lend a hand. Earlier, I tried reaching out to Robin's parents, hoping they'd offer some support, but that backfired. They picked up the phone, only to give me an earful, making it crystal clear they were onto me. Their anger cut deep, especially since I genuinely cared for them. They'd always been so kind to me, and now I'd gone and betrayed their trust. The guilt weighs heavy on me, knowing I've let them down in such a big way. It's a painful realization that's hard to shake off. Another blow that hit me hard was discovering that Robin had emptied our joint account before I even reached my parents' place. Our joint account was our lifeline, where Robin would deposit money for bills, expenses, and my own needs, since I'm not working much as a stay-at-home mom. It was a major source of financial support for me. But to my shock and dismay, when I checked the account, it was drained completely. Every cent gone. It left me stranded, and I had to rely on my parents to even cover the cost of the Uber ride. It was a painful reminder of just how much damage had been done to our relationship. I honestly don't think Robin will ever forgive, but I can only hope. I need help in the form of advice or suggestions on how to approach Robin. Do you think he'll ever forgive me? Thanks for listening, though. Update. Hi, everyone. I know it's been a while since I last posted, and I honestly didn't expect to be back here. But seeing how much attention my last post received, I feel compelled to share another update with you all. A lot has happened in the past month, and I want to fill you in on the details. First of all, I want to share that Robin and I are sadly getting a divorce. As I mentioned earlier, my parents had promised to stage an intervention to help me mend things with Robin. We tried reaching out to him multiple times, but he refused to pick up, even when we called from a private number. So we decided to take matters into our own hands and headed over to his house, hoping to speak with him face to face. When we arrived at the house, to my relief, Robin was home. Despite the tension between us, he still had a soft spot for my parents because of how kind they had always been to him. So he graciously welcomed us inside, although he did shoot me a disapproving look. Nonetheless, he greeted my parents and my brother warmly and even offered them drinks. I was shocked to hear that. Robin wasn't supposed to know John. He must have noticed my surprise because he went on to explain. John had actually approached him before, claiming that he and I had sex and that he thought Felix was his. At first, Robin didn't believe him, knowing I usually stayed home. But John kept insisting that Felix was his child. As Robin started seeing similarities between John and Felix, he began to wonder if there was any truth to it. That's when he decided to do a DNA test to prove John wrong. I was speechless. There was no defense I could offer. Seeing that Robin wouldn't change his mind, my parents decided it was best to leave. Before we departed, Robin made it clear that divorce papers would be coming my way soon, and he wouldn't be paying child support. He even threatened to sue for paternal fraud to avoid it. I broke down, crying and pleading, but Robin remained unmoved. Eventually, my parents had to physically pull me away from Robin's house. They reminded me that I had brought this upon myself. This is everything that's happened. I'm still at my parents' place, and even though Felix senses something's off, he's too young to fully grasp it. Honestly, I blame John for everything. I'll never forgive him. And he won't ever have a say in Felix's life, no matter what. Thanks to everyone for their support. I just hope others don't make the same mistake I did. Feeling defeated doesn't even begin to describe it. How did I go from a life with luxuries like a home theater and a swimming pool back to my parents' house? Robin had gotten me used to that lifestyle, and now I'm back to square one. Getting back into the workforce after such a long break won't be easy. Thanks for listening, though. I guess it was nice while it lasted. Like my parents said, I brought this on myself. Financially ruined me in court because of a stupid kiss on a night out. I believe the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, applies to me because you really don't know what your enemies are up to. I got betrayed by someone I thought was my friend, and I haven't been the same ever since. I'm not okay right now, and I don't have any friends, which is why I want to share this story with everyone. Hey Redditors, my name is Chloe, and I am 26 years old. My husband, or should I say ex-husband now, Alex, is 28 years old. I believe I should start telling this story from the beginning of my life. I come from a poor family, and that's just it. We are a family of 4, and I have one younger sister, Sophia, who is currently 20 years old. There were so many difficulties growing up, especially from my younger years. When I turned 6, Sophia came into the world, but the crazy part is that she doesn't belong to my dad. My mom was a street food vendor. I don't know if there's another term for that, but she sold junk such as hot dogs and the likes in this cart she dragged around on the street. On the other hand, my dad worked as a janitor, so as you can already imagine, the money they were getting wasn't a lot, hence the reason I said our family was poor. So you could imagine the shock on my dad's face when he heard she was pregnant. I was still 5 years old when I heard them shouting. They say kids usually forget things when they're young, but in my case, it is different because I remember everything. I remember the story she told him on how it all happened. Okay, it's a bit vague, but you know the usual saying of, it was a silly mistake. She said she didn't want to get rid of the baby because she felt she was going to be special and change our lives. My dad couldn't believe what she said, and he said he couldn't stay with her anymore. The first few days, he came back home drunk and became violent, which made me cry every day. I don't know how 9 months came by so quickly, but I turned 6, and after, my mom gave birth to Sophia. Dad was not there, of course. He couldn't live with mom carrying another child, so he stopped coming home at a time. The one time he came home was for a divorce, 2 months after Sophia's birth. I remember my mom crying and reading a paper with the word divorce written on it. She signed the paper, and I wondered what it was that made her cry, but eventually as I grew up, I figured it out when Dad stopped coming home. Dad wasn't rich enough to file for custody, and I never thought he wanted to, since it was like a burden of my choice. I remember him kissing me on my forehead and saying that he loved me, and he was always going to be there for me. I don't know where he went, but the next day he came to pack his things when I was sleeping. Or at least that was what Mum said. It was just Mum, Sophia, and I that was left in this small house, and Mum struggled every day. Sure, she cheated on my dad, but she was still my mum that I loved, and Sophia was my sister. Mum was able to send me to school up until I finished high school by the time I was 18. I was also able to get a job as a babysitter or dog walker, anything that could give me money since I wanted to help Mum out with Sophia. Sophia was an angel, and Mum was not completely right about her changing our lives. But I love my sister. I was able to save enough and get admission into Florida State University, but I was a part-time student since I was also working. This is where things were going to go wrong, and I had no idea. But there's a reason I'm telling you the backstory of my life, because they are all connected. I was a people pleaser because I'd do anything to make people content with me, so they'd give me extra tips when I'm done. When I was a part-time student and also going to work, I did extra work to earn money. I offered to do people's assignments and I'll get paid for it. And yeah, that was how I met Alex. We weren't in the same major, but we were in the same year. He said he heard I did assignments and he gave me his assignments to do. It became a regular thing that happened a lot of times, and it was so helpful for me because he paid lots of money. I asked a friend of mine, Sheila, about him, and she told me that he came from a rich family and had lots of money. A year passed, and this continued until he came to me for a personal reason. He wasn't a serious person with studies, and he told me he hated reading. His grades were very low, and he didn't care because he wanted to get school done until his father told him he had to get high grades, or he wasn't going to get anything from him. Alex asked me to be his tutor, and he said he was going to pay me lots of money. This was a great opportunity for me, and I didn't complain when I saw the amount of dollars he offered. I accepted the tutor job immediately, and he told me I was going to be tutoring at his house. I said no because it didn't sound like something I was comfortable with. I told him and asked him if we could study at the library instead, and he agreed. We got to work almost immediately, and though we studied different majors, it was closely related, so tutoring him was not too difficult. I was always a straight A student. My mom made sure to remind me of the importance of education right from early childhood, and this played a huge part in my studies, as I was always at the library trying to learn new things whenever I wasn't working, and that contributed greatly to my academic success. Tutoring Alex was surprisingly not as difficult as I thought it would be because he was a really fast learner. And not only that, but he had a good memory as well. He was just not being serious with studies. Alex was super respectful and didn't try anything improper with me. In fact, we got along so well I didn't know when I got so comfortable around him, and I noticed he was comfortable around me. We would talk a lot about life and everything that had happened to us. Turns out Alex just never tried hard, and hence his grades. We were getting closer by the day, and Alex began to tell me more and more about himself, until it felt like I knew him better than anyone else. I knew almost everything about him down to what he wanted to do and why he was currently putting in so much effort. He told me that he wanted to do well on his own and show his dad that he didn't need his wealth. Alex, like a lot of other men of his age, didn't have the best relationship with his father. He was pretty ambitious, far more ambitious than I thought, and I was beginning to love him for it. He told me that he wanted to start up a company, something huge, and together we started drawing out plans. Alex and I had everything covered. We had decided where the company would be in the next 5 years as at that time, and even set goals for each year too. At first I misjudged the situation. I thought Alex was just playing around until I saw him put it to action with my own eyes. He had gotten a small place and little equipment that could begin the work, and that was how our company began. Of course, final exams were coming up, and so we studied harder than ever and finished on a high note. We were so ecstatic, and I was so proud of everything we could achieve. Alex had met my mom and Sophia a few times already. He and Sophia got along so well, and I liked that. Alex asked me out a few weeks after we had graduated. I wouldn't say I didn't expect it, but it wasn't an easy decision for me to make. My friend Sheila had a huge crush on Alex, and I knew about it. She had told me more times than I could remember, but Alex never seemed interested in her. I accepted his proposal, and we officially started dating. Sheila was furious at me, and she didn't talk to me for some months. Alex was an attractive guy. I never looked at him that way until we started dating. I always saw him as my student, but things were different. He was now my boyfriend. He was taller than I was. I wasn't that tall anyways, but he was the perfect height. He always looked good, and I always thought it was because he had the best clothes to wear. But turns out he actually knew how to dress, smell, walk, and he was just perfect. I had never been a romantic type of person, but I knew women would give an arm and a leg to be with Alex. Alex had a friend, Frank, who majored in law, and he became the company's attorney and Alex's personal attorney too. Frank was a great lawyer and a close friend of Alex. They both had a very similar background, and so they got along really well. I did not know much about Frank at all, and I didn't really care to. We didn't see each other a lot, just days when we had a meeting that he had to be involved in. Alex and Frank would, however, hang out a lot. This continued for a year, and finally, Alex asked me to be his wife. It was a small surprise with only a few friends, and my mom and sister, but it worked. I agreed. And within the next year, we got married. Our company was doing quite well for itself and was beginning to make a name. Apart from being official partners, we were now also married, and things were looking great. We both understood our roles in making things work, and we did things without fault. 3 years passed since then, and our company had already surpassed all the goals we set for it, thanks mostly to Alex's effort. He was way more serious than I thought, and he definitely changed from the nonchalant boy who didn't care about school that I met all those years ago. He was driven, very driven. He really wanted to show his dad that he could do much better without him, and he was proving himself right, and as his partner, I can attest to that. As for our marriage life, things were normal. Nothing unusual ever happened. We had what you'd call a very average marriage. Nothing exciting ever happened, but we never argued, and that brought me great peace. We'd always talk and go on date nights, and all but aside from that, our marriage was very plain. We hadn't really put in much effort for a baby yet, and I think that sat right with us, because at the rate we both worked, a baby at that time wouldn't be convenient. There was always an event at the end of the year to celebrate the success of the company. It was not always the same thing we did. The first year was an official party, the second was a camp out, and last year it was going to be a beach party, but it was changed to a weekend hangout in a cabin. Our company had just over 40 employees, and so it could work. We rented 3 cabins uptown for ourselves, and everything was still going great up until that point. I remember the night before we left, Alex told me that he'd have preferred it if we just had the beach party. But since everyone else wanted this, he had to choose it. Our company had many young employees, and most of them were single, but a few of us were already married. Out of the 40 of us, 35 showed up. Some couldn't for one reason or the other, but as every year before that, Frank was present. Frank is definitely in his late 20s. He is dark-skinned and tall, taller than Alex. He has a good build and generally looks good. His voice gives him a presence too. Our employees present were mostly the ones fresh out of college/universities, and the few ones still in their finals. We prioritized hiring the younger set of people, and almost all our employees were young, just like Alex and I. During our hangout, there were different games like board games, consoles, group games, and everyone picked what they liked and did it. Growing up, I was never a party person. I always read books when my friends went to parties. The first party I attended was the first one hosted by our company, and so after living for 25 years at the time, this was only my third. I always heard the stories and how parties went wild, and all but never really cared much. At the previous events, nothing wild happened because of the type of events they were. This, though, felt different. It was only Friday night, and I could see everyone letting loose. They didn't seem like the organized and diligent workers we knew. Everyone was doing different things, and some ladies wore something very unethical. But I couldn't complain. It was a party after all. Friday night went by really slowly for me. It was all partying and dancing. I was on the fence floor, but I did not feel like I belonged because I couldn't even dance if I tried to. And I noticed pretty quickly that most people weren't really dancing, but they were being touchy and unethical instead. I left almost as soon as I got there, but Alex stayed the duration and danced all night. I had never seen that side of him before that day he danced, and I watched him for a while. I saw a lot of ladies throw themselves at him, but he gently declined them. Deep down, I wished I could be a party person just for the weekend. Everyone woke up late on Saturday. After all, most people were hungover. Alex woke up quite early, though. He hadn't drank last night. He doesn't drink or smoke, And that's one rule he's lived with his whole life, and that didn't change because of the party. He got up and prepared for the activities of Saturday. Saturday was a fun day for others, but for me, I would always remember it as the day that ruined both marriage and life. It started out early for me, but late for almost everyone else. I made breakfast for Alex and we brushed over some basic routines as we prepared for the rest of the day. It was noon and we all went hiking for about 3 hours. By the time we were back, we freshened up and got ready for the evening BBQ, which then turned into our game night. That was the main event of the hangout. Every board game I could think about was available, and I was great at board games. I played them for a while, and after a couple of wins, I moved on to the group games. There were so many games being played, but I settled with a group of 10 people. Alex wasn't in that group, but Frank was. I wasn't aware of the game to be played yet, and once they started, I wanted out. It was truth or dare. I was confused about staying or going, but decided to stay because I have lived a mediocre life, so no truth could be embarrassing. And I thought no one would dare me to do something out of line as they knew my position and marriage status. Anyway, the game started out soft. Some pretty basic things were asked until someone dared to take off his shirt, and he did. I knew things were only going to get heated from then on. Some dirty dares passed around until it was my turn. I was to dare someone, and I dared her to take off her shirt, which she did without hesitation. I honestly thought she wasn't going to. Turns passed around till it was her turn, and she dared me to kiss Frank. Now everyone had some dare, while I took a shot for the first time I was dared. I am not a heavy drinker, and I had never drank before up until that point. I don't know if it was the drink I took, but I was definitely feeling more hyped than ever. When I heard the dare, I thought about it for a few minutes. I knew as much as this was a party, this was a work party, and though Alex was not here, there was a huge probability of him finding out. I wasn't able to make up my mind, and so I had to take another shot. After the second shot, I was definitely drunk. I couldn't think straight anymore, and no matter how hard I tried to control my body, it was difficult. By the time the game had gone round again, and it was right before my turn, was Silas's turn. Silas was a company employee and a college student. He was in his finals at the time, and before I knew what was happening, Silas was to dare Frank, and he dared him to kiss me. Now Frank had a lot to drink too and was definitely already feeling it. Frank made his way to me while I just started looking lost. Before I knew what was happening, Frank's lips were all over mine. Everything got so dizzy and I passed out after that. I saw Alex in the distance running over to me where I was before I passed out. I did not know what happened, but I woke up the next morning next to Alex in our room. I asked him, but he wouldn't talk much to me. Sunday's event went by without me because I stayed in the room. I had remembered what happened between myself and Frank, and I was not only embarrassed, I also suspected that Alex saw us, and this made me scared. Alex was someone who didn't like to open up much when something happened. He preferred to solve it on his own and stay locked up in his head till he was able to sort it. And this didn't only make me scared, it made me worry about him. But I knew Alex always did whatever he set his mind to do, which only worried me more because that made it extremely difficult to get him to change his mind when he made a decision. I knew Alex very well, and I knew finding out would ruin our relationship. Alex didn't speak to me much on Sunday even after he got back from the event of the day, and it was time to leave. Everyone left on Sunday evening and the drive back home was a long one. I decided to force myself to believe that he'd understand because, after all, it was a mistake. But I was wrong. When we got home, Alex told me that he knew everything. In our 4 years of marriage, that would be our first argument. In my head, I'd hoped he'd understand that it was just a silly kiss that happened while we were drunk. Besides, it was Frank who came to me, but he didn't listen. Frank wasn't picking calls either. A few weeks into the new year had passed, and I hadn't seen Frank since the party. I was hoping he'd come and clear the air as things hadn't been going well in my marriage ever since. Alex and I started having issues because we have not been able to move on, and my once peaceful marriage has now become something else. After working together with Alex for 4 years, he decided to let me go from the company. He's the owner and CEO, and so his call is final. He sent over some divorce letters to me too a few weeks ago, just a few days after my birthday. I turned 26 and I couldn't believe that my husband was going to divorce me because of a silly kiss. We got to court after signing the papers, and of course he got to keep his company and his house while I got nothing. He took all the money and left me with nothing. Update: Everything happened so fast it seemed like a bad joke or bad dream I can't wake up from. After working for 4 years, I was able to accumulate some money, and I'm still living off that. But I know I'm going to have to find something else to do very soon. I moved out of my husband's house, and I'm now back with my mom. I barely have anything left, and I'm beginning to feel like a burden to my family again. It's been 6 months after the divorce, and I still see Alex's company on the news doing well and smashing goals. He filed a restraining order on me after I tried to talk things out with him a month ago. I haven't gotten any new jobs since I left that one, and I have also not been able to reach Frank ever since. I still love Alex so much, and I really want to get back with him, but I know that's like a dream that had not come true. I regret my actions, and I wished I didn't even leave the room that Saturday. Alex, if you're reading this, I'm sorry, and I know that what I did was wrong. I still love you, and I miss you more than anything. I am still struggling to move on. I've tried to start over, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I am still somehow tied to my ex-husband. I really have not felt drawn to anyone else, and I cannot stop thinking about the life we had built together and how it has all come crashing down. As time has gone on, I am trying to rebuild my life, and of course, time has healed me a little. I still feel shattered by what could have been. My sister and mom have been crucial for me, as they've been my support too. Of course, I still feel guilty for the end of what could have been, but I am beginning to come to terms with it. Of course, I'm scared of the uncertainty of the future, as I'm still young and the rest of my life is longer than the one I've lived, but don't think I can recover from this anytime soon. Again, Alex, I love you, and it was just a stupid kiss. I really wished we could have worked out and things went differently. I would give anything to have what we had again, and if by a chance you do come across this, please forgive me. Ladies, don't just kiss people on nights out or because of a dare when you're married or dating.